Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 111 of The Best Games, period. The podcast where every week we get together and we talk about a game that might be considered one of the best games of all time. Or it might not be. Who knows? We kind of discuss it. We hash it out. We talk about its pros and cons. We make a list. We check it twice. Gonna find out which game is naughty or nice.
I was hoping you were gonna go there, and I'm glad you did.
I was digging myself a verbal hole, and I couldn't get out of it, so I just had to kind of keep going until I was done.
Yep.
And I know last week we said for BioShock Infinite we were going to be doing, after that we were going to do some Deus Ex Human Revolution, but we decided we were going to do Hyper Light Drifter instead.
Because we're liars.
Yeah, pretty much. You shouldn't trust anything we say, especially
Ever.
about video games.
And on that note,
what did how did people trust us last week when we talked about video games, namely BioShock Infinite?
well, we ran our poll if we want to discuss our copacetic views with the lovely listening audience. And most of them are actually all 4 voters in this poll agreed that yes, BioShock Infinite is one of the best games, period.
Good golly, people. we need get out the vote. The midterm elections are coming up here in the United States. But more importantly, you should follow @BestGamesPeriod on Twitter and participate in our Twitter polls so we get more information. That's one of the weakest pollings we've had.
Yeah, which is kind of surprising since it's such a big game. But
I
we
thought
did.
It would be more polarizing. That wasn't a joke.
Anyway. We also post this podcast to Extra Life, and we had a couple of responses there. We had a couple people who agreed in the comment section and just said, yes, this game is. We had about 4 of those people, and then we had someone who said no, and they didn't like that the game was very bright and colorful, and poppy is the word that they used specifically. And they didn't like having Elizabeth during combat, and they didn't like the twist at the end. So, yeah.
Okay, that's a sizable part of the game they didn't like. But how did they feel about her head size?
We all know it's too big. That's just a fact. Elizabeth's head is too big. For those of you who didn't listen last week, by the way, that comment comes from our contrarian corner person. One of their reasons for disliking BioShock Infinite was because Elizabeth's head was just too big for them. So
it's too big. Also, my name is Jack Gardner, and I'm one of your co-hosts. And this lovely individual who is chatting with me is Naomi Lugo, your other host.
Oh yeah, you're stuck with us, guys.
Yeah, this episode has already just gone awry with. Typically, I put that right at the front of the show, and instead, it's like 3 segments deep this time.
We're breaking the formula.
Next time, I'm just going to introduce us at the very end. Jeez.
And we've been... Yeah, that's fine. That's fine with
but
me.
Next
we
week,
don't matter.
We're going to be talking about Deus Ex Human Revolution. So that
Possibly.
should be fun. Maybe.
Or we might be talking about another sci-fi game, because it is indeed Sci-Fi Games Month.
Or, who knows? Because sometimes when we have guests on the show, it can change our topic, so...
Exactly. We don't know anything, basically, listeners, and you can't trust us. Oh, and what else? What was our other...
Well, I think one of the biggest takeaways of Sci-Fi Month is that science is a liar sometimes.
And so are we. All right. So, what have you been playing this week?
I have been playing so much Spider-Man. All the Spider-Mans. The multiple
All
Spider-Man.
of them, really?
Yeah.
Every single iteration of Spider-Man, huh?
I mean, there are a lot of suits in the game, so there are a lot of different iterations of Spider-Man.
Okay. That's fair.
And I don't want to get into too many any spoiler territory, so I'm just gonna kind of keep it light on the details. But I really enjoy how they open Spider-Man just right off the bat. Peter Parker zipping out in a Spider-Man costume, and you're web slinging through the city within like the first 2 minutes of the game, and it just feels so good.
Yeah, I've just been like jealously browsing through people's in-game photos. It looks absolutely amazing, and I love the time that people will dedicate to getting those perfect shots. Like, I saw someone tweet like, "Hello, my name is blah. I am 40 years old, and it took me 30 minutes to get this shot in Spider-Man." And it was like Spider-Man's ass, just like, you know, he's like in his web swinging mode with his butt out, and then there's an airplane that looks like it's like flying up his butt. So yeah, we get beautiful magic like that when we get photo mode. So
I do have to say though, it is, in regards to Spider-Man's butt, it is no Solid Snake butt.
It isn't. I mean, it's still pretty solid.
It could be better.
What is it, saggy butt? Like what?
No, it's just
Spider-Man.
It's like a weird combination. It's not quite like Nintendo Snake butt, but it's getting there.
Okay.
Yeah.
We need to have a best butts period episode.
All I'm saying is that his pectoral muscles have a bigger crack in the costume than his butt does.
Like Dragon Ball. Yes,
we do have fun here.
One time we will have a best butts period, and maybe best like cleavage period.
That might be a Rushmore podcast.
It would. Maybe we can invite Sir Marcus, and he can we can do a crossover episode when worlds collide. Yeah, and then we can throw some wrestling in there too, because yeah, we know Marcus loves that wrestling.
He does quite a bit. What have you been playing?
I've still been playing Graveyard Keeper.
Have you been punished for not keeping your graveyard?
Not yet, but I'm sure that's coming soon. Yeah, I think this is like the third or fourth week I've been reporting about it. I just got to a point in the game where I'm pretty sure there's no return in the path that I've taken, which is pretty evil, I think.
How do you take an evil path?
Have
you been expanding your graveyard aggressively?
No. There's plenty of ways to be evil. So there's a couple of different paths that you can take. At least from the outset, there's kind of the more capitalist path where you just do everything you can to make as much money as possible. There's the religious kind of path where you can build your church up and build your graveyard and try to make money that way, and gain power that way. And then there's kind of the witchcraft and dark path, which is the one I've been taking. And I won't spoil things too much, but I have done things in this game like make people meat sandwiches, sold people meat to the
I don't like the way you're using the word meat.
People meat. It's a great phrase. People meat. Just say it. People meat.
No, I'm not going to say it.
I might have participated in a little bit of witchcraft, and I might have killed someone, maybe.
Oh.
Maybe. And decorated a room with the skulls of my my buried to-be's.
Oh.
So, yeah.
I'm getting that this game might be a little bit less friendly than Stardew Valley.
Oh, definitely. I mean, the only thing that makes it like Stardew Valley is like the graphics and a little bit of the structures. Yeah, but it is way more complicated and way more weird than Stardew, other than that. Yeah, so don't judge me too much, but I'll let you guys know how the evil path turns out. Because my partner, he is actually playing more of a good path, and we're doing that on purpose to see how the game diverges depending on the actions you take. So hopefully, we're really hoping for a different ending and different play style. So yeah.
All right. How far are you into it so far?
For some reason, Xbox won't let me see how many hours
Oh.
in, which is annoying, but in game, I am like 330 days. So I've almost been in that game world for a year. And the whole premise of the game is that you're trying to go back to your time before you died, because you're kind of in a purgatory kind of thing in medieval times. And your person is trying to get back to a modern time. So that's why you're kind of partaking in the graveyard keeping and whatnot. Yeah, it's really complicated.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we'll see how it goes. And how much more evil I can do. With the people meat.
All right. Did you have any news you wanted to bring up?
Not really. I'm sure there is plenty of it, but I am good for now. Okay. Is there anything that you would like to bring up?
I think the only thing I have to bring up is that they finally did some casting for The Witcher.
Oh yeah,
miniseries. Is
right.
I'm not sure if that's on Netflix.
I think it is Netflix, and I think it's gonna be a full series. Yeah, and Superman is going to be Geralt. So many mixed feelings about that.
Yeah,
Henry Cavill or whatever his name is.
How do you feel about it?
I don't like the casting. I wish they didn't. I kind of wish they didn't go with live action. I wish they went with the in-game cinematics that they use, like at the beginning of the game. I don't know if you remember at the beginning of Witcher 3, where they don't look exactly like the in-game characters, but it's still a really good representation of the world and how Geralt looks. I don't know. Geralt's really tough because he's not like just a pretty boy. He's definitely not ugly, but he's not like.
I think they could uglify Henry Cavill, who looks like he's chiseled out of granite.
Yeah, but that's the thing is, I don't know. I had seen like fake castings where they did like Mads Mikkelsen, and that made more sense to me. He kind of has more of that vibe. Yeah. Where Mads isn't like a pretty boy, but he's certainly
no. He is.
Well, I'm not saying he's not attractive. He's definitely very, very attractive. But I'm saying he's got more of that interesting look, not just the standard Hollywood look, which I think Henry Cavill kind of has. You know? Does that make sense?
He does look like someone you'd avoid if you saw him out in public, just on his own, in like a bar by himself.
You would go up to Superman? Nicholson. Oh, Mads, okay.
No.
Well, he was Hannibal, so... Yeah, I guess that's fair. You don't really want to hang out around serial cannibals.
Yeah, it's almost as bad as feeding people human meat. Yeah.
Without letting them know.
Yeah.
Hey, if the game lets me do it, I'm supposed to do it, right? That's how it works.
I think Henry Cavill is a more dexterous actor than people give him credit for, so I'm looking forward to him tackling this role.
Yeah.
I think people tend to get typecast. Like, people who land the Superman role have a really hard time shaking that perception, and I think this could help. But, interestingly, have you heard that Michael B. Jordan is currently the rumored pick to replace him as Superman?
I did see that, and I am all about that because he did so fantastically as Killmonger. I think he would rock it.
I actually saw someone say that they thought he did a terrible job as Killmonger, and I did a legit real world double take.
What? And plus, he's also gorgeous, so that also, that totally helps too. Yeah.
And then they are apparently, according to the casting call for Ciri, looking for a non-Caucasian actress to play Ciri, which I'm all in favor of, but it has apparently lit a fire under a lot of people's butts.
Of course it has. It's the internet. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, yeah. Yeah, definitely seeing everyone else's casting will help define the series for me, because it's so hard to base any opinion just on like one person, you know? Like,
Yeah.
I'll need more info for sure.
I think what helped me is not thinking of the Netflix series as being based on what's in the video games, and instead thinking of it as like what's in the books. And
But yeah, I know that's the ideal way to look at it, but it's just so hard to not merge those two together because we just want more of The Witcher. So we just want more Geralt. And
I don't know. Maybe it's also that I've always thought that Geralt was like the weakest part of the Witcher series.
What?
I do not care for his character at
What?
all.
Oh my god.
I think he's like
Are you serious right now?
Yeah, I think he's like the most boring part of The Witcher in any game he's in.
He's like stabbing me in the heart, and you're definitely stabbing my partner James in the heart. Like I'm looking at a statue of Geralt right now.
Oh, I mean, I have a statue of him on my desk.
He is so disapproving. So disapproving.
I'm
what
just...
are you talking? He's badass without being like annoying, and he's also super snarky, which is like just awesome. And yeah, what? And he's got like white hair and kitty eyes. Come on.
I mean, I think almost all the other Witchers that you encounter throughout the other games, I'm just like, I want to know more about what this guy's doing.
Even the old dude, what's his name?
Vesemir?
Yes, Vesemir.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
You feel like Vesemir's more interesting than Geralt?
Heck yeah.
Oh my gosh. Not saying that Vesemir isn't interesting, but
I think part of it is that like there's that inbuilt like backstory that like the mutagen treatments they undergo robs them of all emotion or whatever junk. I think that hamstrings him a little bit from being super interesting to me.
And you're also kind of a hipster, where if someone, like everyone else likes it, you kind of have to not like it. So.
No, I think you're just trying to rationalize my dislike.
Nope.
Mm-hmm. Also, which of the two of us has hipster glasses?
Hey, I need them to see. I'm not just wearing frames. Yeah, but yeah, I totally have like vintage aviators.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But they have real lenses in them, so yeah. That's my defense.
All right. We should probably talk about the game that we came together to talk about tonight.
Let's just talk more about characters that we should like but don't.
Okay, what's a character I should like but don't? Or you should like but don't?
Oh man.
Yeah.
Probably a lot.
Yeah.
Anyway,
hipster,
right, fine, let's...
you probably think Mario is like some sort of fascist or something.
Oh my god, I don't like Mario. I really don't like Mario. I almost didn't buy my 3DS because Mario was on it.
I think you just killed the voice actor of Mario. He's Wahoo,
but he's so
last
nice. Wahoo. No, I can't remember his name though. Anyway, like I don't. It's just he's everywhere. He's kind of got like the Pikachu complex where people started hating Pikachu because Pikachu is just on everything, right? So
except people don't hate Mario, except you, and I think you also don't hate Pikachu.
I don't hate Pikachu.
Yeah.
But
so why are you comparing
really
him to Pikachu?
Well, no, it's just like people just really hate Pikachu because he's the series mascot and is on everything. And it's a totally fair case. Like anything with Pokemon on it is like gonna have Pikachu. Anything. It's really annoying. So I'm sick of Mario. I don't like it. And it's irrational.
He's a person, Naomi. And he's a plumber. He's a hardworking class hero.
His name is also Mario.
Yep.
That's canon.
Uh-huh. It's not his fault. He didn't legally change his name.
Okay, and I'm Naomi.
Okay, that's your choice, because I know that's not your name. It's the name he was born with. It'd be like me saying, your name is Naomi Lugo. How trite.
Oh, so Hyperlight Drifter.
Yeah, it's a pretty good game.
All right, and we're
credits.
Done.
Gosh, we should do that for April Fool's Day next year.
We should. 10-minute episode.
And the rest is silence.
Upload like an hour and a half, but just nothing. Or if you just make it like really, really, really quiet, that'd be cool too.
That's just ASMR. Okay, so Hyperlight Drifter is a 2016 game by Heart Machine, which is a relatively new developer that I believe formed just to create this game, and going forward is working on other indie stuff. And it's about like a sci-fi man with a laser sword in a post-apocalyptic future.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And the art style is completely pixels in an homage to the SNES era, and it is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, like literally every second of this game is kind of like a feast for the eyes.
It really is. Like, the color schemes and just the little details. It is phenomenally beautiful. We're doing great this episode, aren't we?
Yep. We're really going in deep. This is in-depth analyses.
It's pretty game. So the play style of this game is definitely reminiscent of that older era where you do not have a lot, if any, hand-holding. There's no like arrows saying go this way, except for maybe at the very beginning of the game. And you are left to your own devices because there is no dialogue in this game. So when you talk to NPCs, you just get pictures. And if they have a story, you'll get like a series of 3 pictures telling you about their lives or whatever story they want to tell you. So I did want to bring up the fact that this game was actually really tough for me to play. And I don't mean difficulty-wise, I mean just the style of it. It is... That kind of style game is definitely not typically my jam. Just because... I don't know, actually. I think it's maybe just not how my brain operates, you know? So I just wanted to get your take on the actual gameplay and how it functioned for you.
You know, I was refreshing myself on this game just a little bit before we started recording, and like the lead developer did describe this game as kind of like a mashup of The Legend of Zelda and Diablo, which doesn't really jive with how I perceive this game. I definitely see a lot more of The Legend of Zelda in it than I do Diablo.
Yeah, same, actually.
The combat is very fluid and strategic at the same time. And for whatever reason, when I played it, a lot of the time I made a lot of mental comparisons to Transistor.
Okay.
Which is another game that is sort of told from this isometric style. But I think that the combat in Transistor ultimately works a little bit better because you have the ability to pause time and then plan out a series of moves that winds up being a really helpful ability, and like it's really interesting because it kind of has the effect of turning these battles into turn-based, almost a weird hybrid of turn-based and real-time combat. And I think that this game would have benefited a lot from that sort of mechanic being involved. But on the flip side, once you're it's one of those games you really have to commit to Hyper Light Drifter. And so once you have fully committed and you have been playing for a while and you have your bearings, there does kind of emerge this fluidity, and I would almost describe it as like almost a samurai like battle. Like this is not the right name. I'm thinking Akira Toriyama, but that is Dragon Ball. Oh, the director of Seven Samurai.
Oh.
I feel really stupid.
And now that you said a name, I'm not going to be able to think of the other name.
Yep, I know. I've been watching a lot of Dragon Ball Z Abridged, and so I'm thinking Akira Toriyama, but what I really mean is... This calls for an emergency Google.
Type.
Yeah. Akira Kurosawa. There we go.
Thank you. My goodness.
It has like that Akira Kurosawa feel, where there is just attacks happen really fast, and usually they end up being pretty decisive, especially when combined with your different projectile abilities that you unlock as you progress through the game. And so it's not as immediately... it doesn't feel great immediately, but it eventually gets to feeling that way.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with that. You definitely have to get used to it. You have to learn the flow.
Yeah, and it's different from, like, say, Dark Souls, where once you learn the flow of enemies, it just becomes like a cakewalk because you know the timing of their moves, and so you just dodge and kill them like it's no problem at all. But in Hyper Light Drifter, on the other hand, you are... The game has a way of just throwing tons of enemies at you, and even if they're easy enemies, there's still the possibility that if you lose that rhythm, they can overwhelm you.
Yeah. I definitely had those moments, for sure, which was frustrating, but I could get past that. What I couldn't get past was not knowing what is going on, which sounds like an oversimplification. But I ended up actually looking up a couple of theories about what is going on in the story.
Oh, okay. Well, first, what were you thinking about, like, the combat and stuff? It seemed like you had difficulty.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely enjoyed it, and I enjoyed that flow that you were talking about, but like you said, it was definitely an adjustment getting used to it. I mean, it was an adjustment for me even moving around in the world. I played on PC mostly. I have played it on Xbox in the past, I think. But PC was definitely it was pretty tough for me to get used to moving around. And I don't know if that
an Xbox controller?
No, I just use my mouse and keyboard.
Okay. It does suggest playing with an Xbox controller even if you are. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. That definitely contributed to it, which is why I would love to probably go back and play it on Xbox. But yeah. So, I mean, in general, the combat was okay for me, but the most frustration I had was figuring out, like I said, what was going on and what I'm doing. And that's just due to the cryptic nature of the actual gameplay, which I don't fault this game for, because it's trying to tell its story that way for a reason. And it's just not the style that is really copacetic with me. But yeah, I just wanted to get that out of the way, or not out of the way, but I just wanted to make that point really clear before we headed too deep into the game itself. But what I do really appreciate about this game in particular is the story behind its development. And like I think you might have touched on this before, Jack, but the developer, Alex Preston, he formed the studio, Heart Machine, and lit a fire under himself to create this game because he was born with congenital heart defect and has other health issues plaguing him that have plagued him his whole life. And he knew that he needed to create this game because he didn't know if he was going to have, the next day. And I think that has really captivated a lot of people. And I know that there was a Vice documentary, a really short documentary. It's like less than 10 minutes that came out that really opened a lot of people's eyes to that background and that story. And I think there is just so much intertwined into the actual gameplay based off of this super personal story, and they did such an amazing job conveying it that even though this game wasn't accessible for me, it was still intriguing enough for me to be, curious enough to play it despite those barriers.
Yeah, and that was actually something I didn't know until after I had finished playing the game. I didn't really pay attention to a lot of the hubbub around it, even though basically all I knew about it prior to reviewing it, which you can read over at community.extra-life.org. All I knew was that it had a phenomenal Kickstarter beginning. Basically, this developer went to Kickstarter and was like, hey, I need $27,000 to finish this game. Who's with me? And people just loved the concept and the art and the style of it so much that it wound up raising over $640,000.
Which is insane.
Crazy.
27,000 compared to over $500,000. Like, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then this game obviously didn't come out until 2016. I think it was intended to come out at the end of 2014. So
yeah, something like that.
The scale of the game definitely increased exponentially. But yeah, you were talking a little bit about the story in the game itself.
Yeah.
And it definitely draws from, like you said at the very beginning, like the Super Nintendo era of video games and everything before that, where there wasn't really a ton of dialogue. And this game kind of challenges itself to stick within those confines. And I think maybe the biggest analogy I can think of is, for whatever reason, Super Metroid.
Okay.
Because that's a story in a crazy world with just very minimal exposition. If any, if I'm recalling correctly, there might not even be any exposition. You just kind of have to figure things out as you go along, except that I think Hyper Light Drifter does way more in the confines of the confines it places itself in terms of storytelling than most Super Nintendo games. If it might even be, I would argue actually that it's way beyond anything in Super Nintendo games, because there's just this very, I guess, comprehensive world that has been clearly thought out, and there are tons of things littering the landscape of this post-apocalyptic land that indicate the larger conflicts that happened in its past. You have giant exoskeletons from monsters, or you have giant robot suits that are rusting in grassy fields. You have technology that's clearly ancient but still operational, and all of this kind of just intriguing imagery.
Yeah, it creates a lore within the world.
Yeah, and if not within the world, it fires your imagination to fill in any gaps. So, where there might not be any direct exposition to you about this world or what happened, your imagination, from the images it kind of flashes at you and from the beautiful animations that come across the screen, you can kind of figure out the basic framework of everything that happened just from the environment and a few of the images that are told to you by these different characters that you run across. And it's just a very visual form of storytelling that I totally understand if it didn't, like, gel with your brain the same way it did a lot of other people's, because it is not... I don't want to say it's not spoon-feeding you the story, because, like, that sounds kind of condescending.
I am offended. But no, I totally get what you're saying. Like, and that's what's kind of tough to grapple with. It's like, am I a big dummy for not getting this? But no, it's just a different style of storytelling. And I mean, I started playing games after the SNES era. My first console was a Nintendo 64. And there was a lot less technical limitations than with the storytelling, I mean, there still wasn't voice acting to the scale that we have now, but there was still a lot more polygons to work with. So things were a little bit more literal.
You had polygons, period.
Period, yeah. A lot more than zero. But I've always kind of grappled with this fascination with the era that this game plays with, because they have a tendency to be just punishingly hard for the sake of being punishingly hard. And I mean, a good example of how fans kind of glob onto this is that with updates, the game was made easier because there was a lot of complaints that this game was way too hard.
It was very hard.
Yes. So there was like a split in the community between the people who thought that the game absolutely needed to be hard and that it was ruined by being easier. And then there was the people who were finally able to access the game and appreciated it. And I totally understand the nostalgia part of wanting to play ridiculously hard games. It's a part of the challenge that, that generation of consoles made people go through. But I just don't understand the fascination with games that are just hard for the sake of being hard. And I'm not saying that this game is hard for the sake of being hard. I'm just saying that there's a lot of these types of games that are inspired by that era that just are brutal.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in this game in particular, the difficulty is, especially knowing the knowledge that I learned after the game, it made a lot more sense, but I think it's purposely hard to play into that theme of having this frailty, that this condition where you have to fight to survive. I think that theme is carried over into the gameplay being difficult. But I also hear what you're saying, and I do think that I think for a lot of people, for whatever reason, difficulty has become nostalgia, which is odd. And I don't think that's going to be something that continues going forward with future generations of gamers, because if you really boil it down, the reason games were hard back in arcades was because the people who made the games wanted to make the most money off of them. The people who ran the arcades wanted to make the most money, and you make more money if the game is hard because people put more quarters into it. And that carried over into the NES and Super Nintendo days, where you would literally get games that were almost impossible to actually beat, and it became a badge of honor if you beat the game. But again, that built off of the development principles that had gone into the arcade games. Yeah. And on top of that, a hard game meant that there was more bang for your buck because you would spend more time playing it, and like you were only going to get that one thing. But now we live in an economy of video games where you have prices that range from literally like less than $1 if you're looking at some of Humble Bundle's stuff, to all the way to like $60 and beyond for like special editions or whatnot. And there's a lot of wiggle room in there, and games don't have to be hard to be long and worth playing. And we have the technology now to tell more, more advanced stories, more interesting narratives that are, flashy or aesthetically pleasing, that can take, 3 to 4 hours. And they might not have any combat. They might not have any challenge in them. And I think that there are going to be more and more games like that. And I don't think that's a bad thing, because there will still be games that are hard for
the masochists.
Well, not even for the masochists, but hard for a reason. Like, instead of being just a default setting for game developers, we should be viewing difficulty as a tool in their toolbox for telling stories, and not as just games need to be hard because that's what makes a game. And yeah. I just don't think that applies anymore.
Yeah, like, that's what made Cuphead disappointing for me. Like, I wanted to play that game because it was gorgeous and really interesting, and it was beyond hard to the point of punishing. Like, you had to be perfect to beat it. And I totally get the whole badge of honor thing. I mean, that's a whole other discussion that can lead very quickly into gatekeeping and all of that, but I totally get it. I mean, if there's a certain skill set that you take a long time to develop, of course that's awesome, but Cuphead just off-putting. And I think
yeah. I was largely for in terms of a badge of honor, I was thinking much more of like in the 80s and 90s. Like, if you got to the end screen on, like, Ninja Gaiden or something, you would just let it sit there, and, your friends would come over and be like, oh my gosh, you beat Ninja Gaiden, that's incredible. And that became something that, like, it was a badge of honor. But now there's no reason for that. Like you were saying, it is gatekeeping.
Yeah. Or at least it can lead to it,
Yes, it can lead to
when
that,
people are like, oh, you're not a real gamer if you don't play these kind of games and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But to move the conversation along, I really liked the metaphor that formed with again, then this phrase came up a lot when I was doing research on this game, and that is embracing limitations. Because, of course, you get the embracing limitations in the game's design itself, because they purposefully chose to create these pixel worlds in an enclosed amount of space. They wanted to optimize the worlds that they were building, but then that also leads to the developer's experience. He had no choice but to embrace the limitations of his illness to make this game. And he purposefully made it as a way to talk about his illness and his experiences in there. I mean, as the drifter in the game, he is inflicted with some sort of disease that is continually progressing, and you'll see it pop up every once in a while, and it's jarring to see this little pixel character cough up blood, and there's a cute little sound effect when he coughs, but it's still really upsetting and impactful to see that. And that's where this game really got me, is in the little moments throughout it. You can your little character you are playing is pushing for whatever reason, but there's always this kind of monster on his back. And it just really, even with me not being able to completely grasp everything that was going on, it really spoke to me on a level that I don't even know how to convey myself. For a little bit of background, my partner of 8 years, he has a very serious illness right now that is severely debilitating to him. And he was also drawn to this game and what it meant because of the developer's story. And from reading what I read articles before the game even came out, in interviews with Alex Preston, and he said that a bunch of people were reaching out to him either because they were mad that he was making the game before them, because they also had that story and also had that drive to make something similar, or they were giving him encouragement because they also knew what it was like to go through something like this. And I think this is just the ultimate pinnacle of what games could be, and that's a way to reach out to people and tell them a story and convey your experiences through this game. And it's really stunning because it's pretty abstract when you think about it. It's this pixelated art game with no dialogue, yet they're able to convey the pain and the push for survival when you have everything stacked against you.
It's a game that not only conveys those sorts of emotions and experiences, but it's something that I think it paints with a wider brush than that, because the game itself like opens with just this beautifully realized I think I would call it a nightmare. It's basically like visions of this beautiful world glistening with light right before it's blown up, and then there are bodies everywhere, and in the middle of all of this is the Drifter fighting against this strange alien darkness. And then he wakes up, and he's just alone with a little robot friend in the middle of the wilderness. And it's one of those games that, from that point on, like that sets the expectations. Like that nightmare and that kind of grimness mixed with beauty, mixed with melancholy, kind of makes this entire landscape hum with joy that used to be and is no longer, and all of these the weight of memories left behind in this world, and you're just kind of picking your way through them. It is simultaneously beautiful and awful and grotesque and also incredible and amazing. And I think ultimately it's the story of perseverance and pushing through to protect some spark of hope. Like, I think that's kind of what that central town is. It's this strange kind of cavalcade of different people that have gathered at this city center and are starting to build something new out of all of these old parts and pieces. And
see, I see that, and not to interrupt you, but I see that more as a metaphor for the world in general, and I see the hope in the fact that the Drifter is even moving along, period. Because as someone who's been living with someone who has a very severe illness, it is like all those words used to describe it, grotesque but beautiful, to see someone just push forward through severe pain to move at all, not knowing what the future is going to be. But I think the town and what the drifter is hopefully able to achieve in the end is give hope for the rest of civilization. And I think that's the creator of the game kind of looking from the outside in and saying that they were able to create this piece of art for the rest of the world. You know, they were able to create this piece that will encourage other people through whatever they might be going through, whether it's an illness like him or people who are just generally inspired by what he was able to do despite his illness.
Yeah, I think that the world is kind of a reflection of the drifter. Like the world from I don't know, like I think textually the drifter is something of like a time traveler, time displaced, like this relic of the past. And ultimately kind of what his mission entails is collecting these 4 different shards and opening up this gateway in that leads beneath the town, and confronting this darkness that has kind of plagued his memories and dreams, before it can, you know, rise up and destroy the world again. And so it's fighting for some kind of a future for everyone, not just himself.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, something that makes him an even more heroic, tragic hero.
Exactly. Again, going back to people who suffer through these chronic illnesses, is a lot of times they don't get their strength from wanting to live for themselves, but wanting to live for everyone else around them. Mm-hmm. So it just makes a lot of sense the way that they portrayed the story. And from the story analysis that I've seen, the drifter was afflicted with, or at least this is a theory that someone had that sounded pretty solid, was afflicted with this illness by this force in the world who wanted him to destroy that central cell piece, whatever that thing is. And yeah, I don't know, it's strange, but it's like using the illness as a driving force almost, which is kind of contrary to how we view illness in general, I think. So that makes it another interesting part of the story.
Yeah, like maybe the illness as both something that creates the sense of urgency.
Yeah. Which of course the creator of the game felt, because they didn't know, you know, how long they were going to be on this world, so they pushed themselves to make this game.
Yeah.
So in that sense, you know, they might not have created something like this at all if it had not been for the illness.
Right.
So it makes it really interesting.
But it also serves as kind of that antagonist. It kind of...
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Honestly, the piece of information about the developer and kind of that additional layer of context for me is what really elevates this game.
Definitely.
I think if you were to play through this game without any of that knowledge and just kind of be just take it on what's there, I don't know that I would get nearly as much out of it as I do with that kind of backwards lens that I can shine on it now.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think I would definitely appreciate the art style, but I don't think I would have given this game another look.
Yeah, it's, I mean, and we haven't, I mean, I know we've mentioned it a few times, but holy moly, the things that this game does with pixels is frankly incredible. I would hazard a guess to say that most most screens in this game, most of the areas, you could screenshot it at pretty much any time or take a GIF of any given moment in this game, and it would be objectively gorgeous. Like,
oh yeah,
it's just visually, it is delightful. It is amazing to just look at. On that alone, I would recommend people play it. But then it also has it has a great soundtrack by Disasterpeace, who also did the soundtrack to Fez, which that's a game we should talk about sometime. I want to hear you
oh god,
try and talk about Fez, Miss I Hate Puzzles over there.
Yeah. Yeah. So you want to torture me? Cool. Got it.
Maybe that'll be our last game for October. You know, the ultimate horror game for you.
Yay.
But yeah, it has interesting and solid gameplay. But I think without that additional layer of context, the game would not have been elevated with as much meaning and beauty in my brain, because looking back on it, you're like you pick out all these different things. It's like, holy crap, this is an amazing thing to even exist. And it's because of that lack of dialogue, there is that potential that you miss out on that, on all these little pieces that you noticed, but you never really put together in the way where you were like, oh, this is about battling an illness. Or maybe that's just me, and I'm
no, that's definitely where I was. Like, I missed a ton of it, and I was upset with that because I wanted to get the full experience of the game.
Yeah. Would you say that is a weakness of the game, that you didn't get that until you looked into some outside sources, until you like looked into the game itself?
I would say it's a weakness for its accessibility. Like, it definitely makes it so that it's not going to register with everyone, but on a more objective level, I would say no, because it uses that framework for a reason. If it was just, like we said earlier, one of those games that's difficult or cryptic for no reason, I would definitely count it against it. But this game intentionally uses every aspect of that to tell the story overall.
Which, that's as you were saying that, it occurs to me that, like, it not hammering it over the player's head that, hey, this game is about chronic illness. Is another
that's
aspect.
A point in itself. Yeah, because
chronic illness isn't always obvious.
And there's this really horrible paradox that happens with people who have illnesses, and it's that people outside of the person suffering, they want you to fall into one of two categories, and you're going to get punished for being in either of them. And and those two categories are, if you have these severe illnesses and severe pain, you're just supposed to put on a brave face and just not make it obvious that you're in pain to anyone. And, you get praised for that. And, oh my gosh, they're so strong despite battling cancer or whatnot. But the downside to that is then people will oftentimes not believe that you're actually in pain. And then there's the camp where they don't want to see you suffering, but they want your illness to be believable. They want to see the chemo baldness and all of that for it to be real in people's heads. And then, of course, people who succumb to the pain and actually express it, they are then chastised and say, oh, you're not strong. You're not dealing with this illness like I would. It's a double-edged sword for anyone who's dealing with these things. And it's even more difficult when you don't have a diagnosis as well known as something like cancer.
Yeah.
Because, it's easier for people to contextualize something like cancer, versus something that is more internalized. Like, I've heard so many stories where even parents of people who are suffering these chronic illnesses will say to their other loved ones that, oh, they're just totally making it up. It's all in their head. Meanwhile, they've been suffering with this illness for years and gone to many clinics, and, you know, they suffer with it every day. And it's just, it's a real horrible thing to see happen, but I appreciate that they also tackled that in this game in even that really subtle way, because it is such a huge part of what people have to go through when they have these chronic illnesses.
Hey, yeah, I wasn't expecting this episode to get as heavy as it did.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I think this is pretty. This is interesting stuff, because I also think that chronic illness is generally undercovered in art, like, because a lot of creators also want people to fall into those categories, you know, those easily defined categories you were just talking about.
Yeah.
Like it's much easier to show someone who is very sick with cancer, say.
That's why on TV shows you always see people have cancer. Like, it happens a lot. And even with people who have these illnesses, sometimes they don't even know what's going on. And then they'll say stuff like, oh, I wish I could just have cancer. I wish I just had cancer so I could know what to do. And as, you know, people on the outside of that, they're like, wait, what? Why would anyone ever say that? And it's because of all of those reasons, is they will not get recognized by the healthcare system. They will be pretty much ignored and pushed under the rug if they don't have this diagnosis. And even if they do have this diagnosis, the healthcare system oftentimes fails them. And then they'll also know what to expect. Because when you have a chronic illness that you don't know what's going on, or even one that is like tumultuous, like having congenital heart disease, you don't know what to expect. And sometimes, even if it's a horrible outcome like cancer, knowing what to expect is at least a little bit of comfort.
Yeah, and this entire game is kind of built on not knowing stuff, and that's part of what makes it so mysterious and creepy.
Probably why I didn't like that playstyle, is I've had enough of that in my real life where I need my games to be flat and
certain,
spoon fed.
Yeah. Again, not spoon fed. I think
no, I know.
Uncertainty and certainty versus certainty would be a better description. Yeah. So would you consider this? Do you have anything else you want to touch on?
I'm sure I would. I think that this game is a masterpiece in what it is able to create. And even though you have to peel away those layers to completely comprehend it, that's what you have to do with a lot of art, especially like literature. You have to be able to pay attention and find those little details. And that's what makes it, you know, a great work of art versus just another good game. So the fact that this developer was able to set out with a mission to create a game based on his experience with the unknown and his illness, and turn it into something absolutely beautiful and haunting, and have such a good public response, is he succeeded in that. And that's what I see in this game, is that he was able to do that. And I mean, as someone with, I don't have an illness myself, but someone who is very close to a person who's suffering, I really appreciate what he was able to do. And I really hope that people who played this game really are able to consider that and kind of realize those emotions that are so hard to say, like that feeling of hopelessness, but still needing to move on, that you don't really know what's going on in your life, but you still need to move forward no matter what that driving factor is. I just think that it is an elevated piece of art in that sense.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, have you played the game co-op?
I have not.
I haven't either. I'm interested to see how they implemented that co-op into the game, and if it, because it would be interesting if it wasn't rebalanced for co-op, and if you just had...
like it was just thrown on there for co-op's sake. Yeah, because I mean, so much of this game is about that single player experience. That
Well, and also like, I don't know, it's easier to go through stuff when you have someone there to help you, you know?
Yeah.
Which I was just, as you were talking, I was just kind of thinking like that would be...
That would be so awesome if they incorporated it, yeah.
Yeah, an additional layer to the whole, to what it's trying to say.
Yeah, because I mean, throughout the game, the Drifter is alone, but still has that little robot thing. Even though it doesn't talk, there's still a companion there.
Yeah, and he has help from different NPCs that are also sort of drifters, and having
similar to him.
Yeah, having another drifter just co-oping through all these different challenges would definitely add that additional layer of, you know, just having someone to rely on while you have that chronic illness, you know?
Yeah, that's a really cool point. Now I'm curious.
Try it out and report back.
All right.
So, would you consider this one of the best games, period?
I would.
Okay.
Based on all those reasons I said. Yeah. And it's gorgeous. How about you?
You know what? I think if you had asked me this right after I finished playing, I would have said no. I would have said it was a good game. And I think I even said this in my review. Like, it's a good to great game that is absolutely beautiful and has a magnificent soundtrack and does things with pixels I've never seen before. But I think I might have even mentioned in my review that like the lack of context and like coherent storytelling kind of held it back.
Yeah.
But I think that, again, I wrote that, like, I think that was a game that I actually got a review copy for. And I didn't really look at any kind of coverage for the game or anything like that, except for some of the Kickstarter stuff that I just picked up by osmosis over the years.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, immediately after I would have said no, but it's really, really good. And learning all that stuff after the fact, I think, has drastically changed my opinion about it. And I would say yes. Like, there aren't that many games out there that tackle this subject matter in such a beautiful and simultaneously brutal way. It doesn't pull punches in how it portrays things as both kind of horrifying and gorgeous. And I think that says a lot, and it has a lot of meaning for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because, spoiler alert, you're gonna know someone in your life eventually that goes through stuff like this. So, I think it's definitely something that touches on something that everyone will eventually have to go through. In a heartfelt and touching and fun way. It feels weird to say fun, but
yeah,
it is fun.
No, I was reading about that, and the developer himself even talked about that. Like, they were thinking about implementing a illness mechanic, and this was before the game came out, so it would have looked different than anything we saw in the final product. But it's like, we wanted to implement this mechanic, but have it in a way where it wouldn't feel inhibiting the players, but it would still be fun in some ways. And he's like, yes, even the challenge of an illness could be fun in a game. So yeah, I mean, it's something that we debate in games a lot, is like, what is their purpose? And a lot of people say that ultimately it's fun, We want games to be fun because we want our entertainment to be fun. I mean, it's even fun to, cry at a sappy movie. Even though you're experiencing some form of sorrow, it's still cathartic and, I guess, bunny ear quotes, fun. So, yeah, it's fun.
On that note, we both said yes, and
yes.
You all can let us know what you thought of Hyperlight Drifter in the comments anywhere this podcast is posted. It's usually posted over on community.extra-life.org, which you should totally check out. You can also follow us on Twitter at bestgamesperiod to let us know what you think and also participate in some weekly polls. We also have a Patreon, patreon.com/bestgamesperiod. And we don't make anywhere near enough to actually support the show on a monthly basis. So if you wanted to head over there and throw us $1 per month, we'd really appreciate it. And
maybe one day, if we do make it where it's self-sustaining, maybe we'll be able to give you guys some extra content. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, we do our best to occasionally throw something your way, like an extra hour-long bonus episode here and there, which you can find over on patreon.com/bestgamesperiod. And there's some fun stuff on there just for our patrons, so be sure to check it out. And I also mentioned Extra Life in there, and Extra Life is a fantastic charity that helps sick and injured kids all across the United States and Canada. It's wonderful. It's part of Children's Miracle Network Hospitals. And when you head over to extra-life.org, you can actually sign up there, as well as learn some more about it if you have any additional questions. And when you sign up, you can actually choose which Children's Miracle Network hospital you want to support, and then 100% of everything you raise goes directly to that hospital for the purpose of helping those sick and injured kids. And you raise money by playing games. So get some friends together, play some games. Maybe each of you, maybe it's like a game night where people buy in for $5 a piece. And hey, you just raised, I don't know how many friends you have. Maybe we'll say 10. You just raised $50 for sick and injured kids. And you also got to have a fun game night. And that's just one idea. We have people who get all kinds of creative with this. People who live stream, people who play tabletop games, people who play dodgeball outside. Really, it's just whatever you want to make it. And have fun and raise money for kids. So.
And when is that game day this year?
I believe it's either November 3rd or 4th.
It is the 3rd.
It's the 3rd. Okay. Yes. November 3rd this year is kind of the day we're calling Game Day. So get some friends together for Game Day. Maybe send out a little tweet about it, and we'll see it, and maybe retweet it on the Extra Life account, and yeah, that'd be awesome. So yeah, all of that stuff. Am I forgetting something?
You of course can find us on Twitter at extra-life.org. No, not there, at Best Games Period. We also have a Facebook and an Instagram where you can find beautiful GIFs and images of the games that we cover. I
am expecting so many beautiful GIFs of this game.
Oh man, right? I've already have a few videos saved so I can make some lovely GIFs.
Yes.
But yeah, we always appreciate a like and a follow on those. And we do, of course, also love having conversations with you guys. So yeah, thank you so much for your support, and thank you for listening to the show.
Yeah. And I mentioned community.extra-life.org, and that's just the community side of Extra Life, where we post the show every week. And it's also where there's a bunch of other cool stuff about games being written about on the daily. And you can also connect with other people in your area for Extra Life if your other friends are busy or something. I don't know. But we got people from all across the United States and Canada on there, so check it out. And with that, I think we'll all be seeing you next time. Next week. The next
The next.
on the flippity dippity.